Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Down the Rabbit Hole. This week we've got a very different quilt. I didn't actually make this quilt. This was actually made by my mum. And I thought with Mother's Day coming this weekend, it might be kind of a fun one to bring it out and show you. So this is one of my most favourite quilts that I own in the whole wide world. And that's because I lost my mum, my very beautiful mum, when I was only 28. And she was 54, which is the age that I am this year. So I'm finding this Mother's Day a little difficult. So I thought it might be nice to get her quilt out and talk about her a little bit today. So my mum was always a sewer. She knitted and sewed and all that stuff all her life. No one else in her family did. She taught herself how. And the reason that she did that was because she was a very, very beautiful woman. She was a model, and she worked in advertising and all that sort of stuff, and she was, in newspapers. She was Miss Gold Coast and all of those things. She was very, very beautiful, and she always wanted the latest clothes, and they couldn't, she couldn't afford that. They were not a wealthy family, and she couldn't afford to go out and buy all the latest fashions, and so she taught herself how to make them. So she used to sew all her own dresses, and she used to sew clothes for her sister and her brother and her mother and father. She used to knit their socks. And when I was a little girl, she would make all my clothes until, of course, I got to the stage where I was a teenager, and I thought that was the worst thing that could possibly happen to anyone in their lives. And then she stopped being able to make my clothes because I wouldn't wear what she wore. And I desperately wish that she was around now to sew my clothes because, she was incredibly talented and she made beautiful, beautiful things. And I am not a dressmaker. Anyway, I digress. So she decided when I was a very little girl, I think I was maybe only 4 or 5, that she was going to make me a quilt. And she bought all this seersucker fabric. It was 1970 something. And she bought all this very bright sort of gingham seersucker fabric, and that 70s patterning with like the strawberries and the bits of sort of navy plaid and all that kind of, it was that. And she cut out templates from a cereal box into squares, and she traced around onto the back. She never made a quilt before. Traced around onto the back of the fabric, cut it out with a seam allowance, and sewed the squares together on her sewing machine. This was, back before everybody had rotary cutters, obviously, and that was how you made a quilt. That's how I learned to make a quilt, by making cardboard cutouts, tracing around them and cutting them out with scissors. And it's one of my first memories. I remember very, very clearly my mum making this quilt. And I can remember being allowed to help her trace around the squares. I was a very little girl, and she had these enormous dressmaking scissors, big, chunky, heavy ones, and they had really shiny silver blades and black handles. And I remember the sound of that going through the fabric as she cut out all of those seersucker pieces. And she put it all together, and she put really puffy 1970s wadding in it, and it was all puffy and everything, and she just sewed up the tram lines because she didn't know anything about quilting at that stage. And she put a ruffle on it, and it had this bright pink seersucker ruffle, and she put it on my bed, and we were so excited I was going to sleep under it that night. And I decided I'd like to make a quilt too. So when she was doing the ironing, I went and got the beautiful scissors out of her sewing basket, and I cut big holes in my beautiful new seersucker quilt. So that was my very first quilting experience, people. I'm horrified to tell it to you, and you can only imagine how much my mother cried when she realised that I had cut holes in my beautiful new seersucker quilt that she'd spent so long making. Anyway, she eventually forgave me and she made me this quilt. This quilt, she went to a quilting class, and she learned about how to quilt, and she learned about applique, and she learned about putting things together, putting proper blocks together and all that sort of stuff. And she made a lot of beautiful patchwork cushions and things before she actually made this quilt. And she designed this. So all of the applique shapes that are in it and all of the quilting designs are all her own drawings. I was, let me see, this was 1981, I think. So I was maybe 8 or 9. What was I, 9 in 1981. And Holly Hobby was absolutely the thing. So we have our little Sunbonnet Sue up here, who's got the frill on like Holly Hobby's little cap. We have some balloons. We have this beautiful birdie up here. She loved birds, same as me. That's where I got my love of birds from. This funny little guy, which heavens knows what made her think up our beautiful little turtle, but there he is. Mushrooms, because in 1970, my goodness, you know, everybody was loving the mushrooms, and I certainly did as a little girl. We have a beautiful snail down here. And then some more sort of tulipy situations. A butterfly, and this very beautiful pear down here. And I can remember the plotting of this quilt and how she planned it all out. She drew all of the quilting designs out on tracing paper, and then she pricked holes along the lines with a pencil, with a pin rather, and then she put little dots all the way along those calico borders to dot all of those quilting designs on. She planned it all out and designed it all herself. And she dotted every single one of those so that she could then quilt along the lines and wash them out again afterwards. I mean, we have so many other easier ways of doing things these days. And I don't know if you can see the quilting designs in these, but they have these little sort of vine, little curly vine situations going on in here. And she has quilted them with a traditional quilting thread, because that's what you did in those days. Her stitches are fairly large. She was a beginner. Here's me judging her 40 odd years later. But she used beeswax, and I can remember her running the thread through the beeswax, and she used to let me help do that. And while she was making this quilt, I was learning how to do all sorts of sewing that she taught me. You know, she taught me a lot of things, not everything I know, because I've obviously learnt a lot more in my quilting career as I've gone along. But she certainly taught me embroidery of all kinds. She taught me to knit and to crochet. She taught me to use a sewing machine. She taught me to love quietly sitting and doing things productively. She never sat with empty hands, and I now never sit with empty hands. You'll never catch me just sitting down doing nothing. I've always got something in my hand. Anyway, this is the beautiful quilt that she made me. Now, one of the most precious things about it, is it this corner? No, it's the other corner. Down on the bottom corner here is this little embroidered message. It says, "For Sarah the Fairy Princess from Mummy, 1981. And that was the year that she finished the quilt. And in my bedroom, she wrote away for all of these fabrics. So she used to read the Quilter's Newsletter, which was my favourite quilting magazine as well. One of the best quilting magazines that ever existed. So sad when it finally closed down. And there was a coupon in Quilter's Newsletter magazine. They had these full page ads, and they'd have the pictures of the fabric and then a coupon down the bottom, and you could write, you know, I'd like design A and what have you. And these were Laura Ashley fabrics. And so it was quite a sort of incredibly fancy thing that Laura Ashley was in Quilter's Newsletter. So she wrote away to Quilter's Newsletter for all of the Laura Ashley fabrics that are in this quilt, and then they were posted to her. And then the rest of the little ginghams and all of that sort of stuff, and there's a little bit of Liberty in there as well, she bought at Kalara Village Quilts, which was our local quilt shop for many, many years, and it closed down maybe 10 years ago, which was very sad when it did. But it was one of those wonderful, you know, proper first generation, you know, the modern quilt era kind of quilt shops. They had racks of YLI quilting thread and, you know, all the beautiful pastel shades of things all along, and lots of burgundy and pine green and mission brown, as we did in those days. Yeah, and that was how she made the quilt. And up until not very long ago, I still, because I kept a lot of the things from her sewing cabinet when she passed away, obviously, and up until not very long ago, I still had little scraps of these bits of Laura Ashley that I've kind of just hidden in my quilts here and there as I've gone along. So this is my mummy's quilt. With Mother's Day coming this weekend, I thought it would be a nice thing to talk about. We don't have a pattern for this currently. I have actually remade all of the blocks in Tilda fabrics. I've done it in Tilda because I thought that was a really nice kind of fairly close thing, but with a modern spin on it. I've remade all the blocks, I've redrawn all the patterns, I've recreated all of the quilting designs and the wavy scallop border. I haven't put the quilt together yet, and I haven't quilted it yet because I want to hand quilt it. Obviously, it would be such a shame not to. One day though, this design will be a pattern, and I just love the idea that maybe, you know, I'll be publishing a pattern that was actually a quilt that was made by my mum, which I think is pretty special. So even if nobody else ever made it, I would think it was absolutely lovely and perfect. Because there's no pattern this week, what we've done instead is to do a little Mother's Day sale for you. So on the website, you'll find until this Sunday, Mother's Day, May 10. Damien's shaking his head at me. May 10. There is 25% off all PDF patterns and all of my online classes. So please enjoy that. If you're a mum, happy Mother's Day to you. If you are not a mum or you don't have a mum, you know, I feel you. Mother's Day is not always happy, but I feel like we're all a mother to something. You might be a mother to your cactus collection. You might be a mother to your friends that you take care of. So if you are mothering something this Mother's Day, take care of yourself and treat yourself to a pattern from my website, 25% off. Thanks guys, see you next week.